I didn't plan on remembering that night the way I do. It was supposed to be ordinary, the kind of evening that disappears as soon as it ends. But the problem with ordinary moments is that sometimes they don't ask for permission before they change shape. My girlfriend was busy in the back room of the repair shop, arguing on the phone with a supplier. Voices rose and fell behind a half-closed door, punctuated by the buzz of fluorescent lights that never quite stopped humming. I was supposed to be scrolling on my phone, killing time, waiting for her to finish. That's when her best friend sat down beside me. Not across, not politely distant. Beside, the bench was narrow, vinyl cracked from years of use. And when she sat, our shoulders didn't touch, but the space between them felt deliberate, like something being measured. She smelled faintly of clean laundry and coffee that had gone cold. The kind of scent you notice only after it's already settled into you. She was older than both of us by a lot, mid-40s, maybe more, but there was nothing fragile about her presence. She carried herself like someone who knew where she belonged in a room, even when she said nothing. Dark hair pulled back without fuss, reading glasses tucked into the collar of her blouse. Hands that rested calmly in her lap, fingers relaxed, as if they'd learned patience over time. "You look bored," she said, not unkindly. "I'm good," I replied too quickly, then added, "just waiting." She smiled at that, a small curve of her mouth that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Waiting can be the hardest part," she said, like it was a lesson she'd already learned and wasn't sure I had. The silence after that wasn't empty. It pressed in. Somewhere, a radio crackled with static. Outside, rain started tapping against the metal roof, light at first, then steadier. She shifted slightly, crossing one leg over the other, and the movement pulled my attention before I could stop it. She noticed. Of course she did. Instead of calling it out, she reached into her bag and pulled out a bottle of water, twisting the cap slowly. "You okay?" she asked, quieter now. I nodded. "Yeah, just a long day." Her eyes lingered on my face longer than necessary, not invasive, just observant, like she was reading something I hadn't said out loud. "You always say that," she replied, "even when it's not true." That caught me off guard. I laughed, then stopped halfway through when I realized she wasn't joking. My hands tightened around my phone, screen dark, forgotten. She leaned in slightly then, not close enough to touch, but enough that her voice didn't have to travel far. "You don't have to fill the silence, you know," she said. "I wasn't trying to," I said. "I know." Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear my girlfriend's voice through the door again, sharper now, frustrated. The sound made something shift between us, though neither of us looked toward it. Without really thinking, I asked, "Do you come here a lot?" She smiled again, softer this time. More than I should. Her fingers brushed mine when she handed me the water bottle she'd opened. It was accidental, clearly so, but neither of us moved away right away. The contact lasted maybe half a second, maybe less, long enough to register, long enough to feel wrong in a way that didn't feel bad. She withdrew her hand first. Then she sat closer, just enough that her arm rested near mine, heat passing between us without contact. She tilted her head toward me, eyes forward, and whispered, almost like she was testing the words as she said them. "You feel this too, don't you?" The door behind us opened. Voices shifted. The moment broke, but it didn't leave. Even now, I still think about the way she didn't wait for an answer, and how I didn't give one, even though my silence already had. My girlfriend asked me to help her friend reorganize the storage room behind the shop. Nothing complicated, just boxes, paperwork, old parts that had been sitting untouched for years. It felt harmless enough. Necessary, even. That's how these things usually disguise themselves. She was already there when I walked in, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied back again. The room smelled like dust and cardboard and something metallic. A single bulb hung overhead, flickering faintly, casting uneven shadows that made everything look older than it was. "Hey," she said, glancing up. Then, after a pause, "Thanks for helping." Her tone was polite, neutral, different from before. I nodded and picked up a box without asking where it went. She didn't stop me, just watched for a second, then turned back to her clipboard. She'd put a kind of distance between us, measured, intentional. It showed in the way she stood slightly angled away, how she kept her hands busy, how she didn't sit this time. We worked quietly at first. The only sounds were cardboard scraping concrete and the occasional sigh when something turned out heavier than expected. I noticed how she rubbed her wrist when she thought I wasn't looking, how she exhaled slowly before lifting anything awkward, how tired she looked when the light caught her face just right. Not worn out, exactly, but stretched thin, like someone who had learned how to keep going without being asked how. At one point, she laughed softly at something stupid I said about the labels being useless. The sound surprised both of us. It slipped out before she could stop it, then vanished just as quickly. She pressed her lips together afterward, as if the laugh had revealed more than she intended. "You don't have to do everything yourself," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. She didn't look at me right away. "I'm used to it," she replied. "That doesn't mean you have to be." That made her stop, just for a second. Her shoulders stiffened, then relaxed again. She turned, finally meeting my eyes. "You're observant," she said. "Not accusing, just noting it." "I notice things," I answered. "I know." She handed me a stack of folders, our fingers brushing again. This time not accidental. Her hand lingered, then pulled back too fast. I saw the hesitation in it, the choice being made in real time. For a while after that, she barely spoke. When she did, it was clipped, practical, but the air felt different, heavier, charged in a quiet way that made every small movement feel louder. Near the end, I reached up to steady a box she was lifting onto a shelf. Our arms crossed. She froze, breath catching just slightly. I felt it more than heard it. "It's fine," I said softly. "I know," she replied. But she didn't move right away. When she finally stepped back, she looked at me like she wanted to say something else, something unfinished. Instead, she smiled, tired and restrained, and said, "We should probably get back before someone notices we've been gone too long." She walked past me, close enough that her sleeve brushed my arm. That night, lying awake, I couldn't stop thinking about how carefully she'd kept her distance, and how hard it must have been to do so. It happened on a night that stretched longer than it should have. The shop had closed early because the storm knocked the power out in half the block. Rain hit the windows sideways, loud enough that conversation had to lean closer to exist. My girlfriend had already left, frustrated, distracted, promising to call later. She didn't. Her best friend stayed. We sat at the small break table with 2 cups of coffee that had gone untouched. The emergency lights cast everything in a dull amber glow, softening edges, blurring lines I was trying not to look at too closely. Outside, thunder rolled like it was deciding something. "You can head out if you want," she said, though she didn't move to stand. "I'm fine," I replied. "Storm's bad anyway." She nodded, wrapping both hands around her mug without drinking. Her fingers looked tense, knuckles pale. I wondered when the last time was that someone had asked her if she was okay, and actually waited for the answer. Her phone buzzed on the table between us. She glanced at the screen and went still. Didn't pick it up. Didn't turn it face down either. "Everything all right?" I asked, then immediately regretted it. She exhaled through her nose. "It's just noise," she said. "Someone who doesn't know when to stop." She finally silenced the phone, sliding it into her bag with more force than necessary. Her hand lingered there, like she was grounding herself. "I'm sorry," I said, though I wasn't sure for what. She looked at me then, really looked. "You don't have to be," she replied. "You didn't do anything." That landed heavier than it should have. The rain intensified, drumming against the roof so hard it felt like the building was breathing with it. She shifted in her chair, closer now, not intentionally, I told myself. Our knees almost touched. Almost. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Yeah." She hesitated, eyes dropping to the table, tracing a water ring with her fingertip. "Do you ever feel like you're in the wrong place, even when you're doing the right things?" I swallowed. "All the time." She smiled at that, but it didn't reach far. "Good," she murmured. "I thought it was just me." Another pause. This one felt dangerous. I wanted to say something honest. Something that had been building since that bench, that storage room, every almost touch since. I could feel it sitting in my chest, pressing up against my ribs. Instead, I asked, "Why do you stay?" She laughed softly, tired. Because leaving would make things complicated. And staying doesn't. Her eyes flicked up to mine. Held there. Too long. That's different, she said. Thunder cracked close enough to make the lights flicker. Instinctively, I reached out. Not to touch her, just to steady the mug before it tipped. My hand brushed her wrist. She didn't pull away. Her breath caught. I felt it through the space between us. Her skin was warm. Real. For a second, neither of us moved. The world narrowed to that point of contact, the quiet hum of the building, the storm insisting outside. She leaned in, just slightly. Enough that I could hear her breathe. I should go, she whispered. I didn't let go right away. Neither did she. Then footsteps echoed from the front. Someone checking the storm damage, calling her name. The spell snapped. She withdrew her hand, stood too quickly, gathering her things. As she passed me, she paused, close enough that her shoulder brushed my chest, and said under her breath, "This can't happen." I watched her walk away, knowing exactly what she meant, and knowing how close I'd come to answering anyway. We didn't talk for a few days after that. Not really. Polite exchanges. Short answers. The kind of silence that pretends to be nothing while quietly rearranging everything underneath it. I told myself that was good. That distance would fix whatever had started to bend out of shape. I almost believed it. Then she asked if we could talk. Not dramatic. Not urgent. Just a message that said, "Are you still around?" Like she didn't already know the answer. We met in the back office after hours. The shop lights were mostly off, just one lamp on the desk, throwing a tired circle of light across old invoices and a chipped mug. Outside, the street was quiet in that late evening way that makes you feel like the world has stepped aside. She didn't sit right away. Neither did I. For a while, we stood there, facing each other with too much space between us and nowhere else to put our eyes. I noticed a faint tremor in her hands. She noticed that I noticed, and folded them together. "This isn't normal," she said finally. I nodded. "I know." She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding that sentence in for days. "I don't mean normal as in wrong," she added. "I mean," she stopped, pressed her lips together. Tried again. "I mean I don't recognize myself lately." That landed hard. She walked over to the desk and leaned against it, not looking at me. The light caught the side of her face, the fine lines near her eyes that didn't soften her, just made her real. "I keep replaying things," she continued. "Moments that shouldn't matter. Conversations that meant nothing until they did." She laughed once, quietly. "I hate that." I shifted my weight, heart beating too loud in my ears. "You don't have to explain yourself to me." "That's the problem," she said, turning to face me now. "I feel like I want to." The air changed, tightened. She took a step closer, then stopped, as if she'd hit an invisible line. "What are we doing?" she asked. Not accusing, not pleading, just lost. I didn't answer right away. I was afraid of what would come out if I did. "I try to be careful," she went on, voice lower now. "I've built my life around being careful, around not needing things that complicate everything." Her eyes searched mine. "And then you look at me like I'm not invisible, and suddenly I don't know where to put that." My throat tightened. "I never meant to." "I know," she said quickly. "That's what makes it worse." We stood there, close enough now that I could feel the warmth of her without touching her. Every instinct in me wanted to close the distance. Every other instinct told me not to move. She reached out, then stopped herself, hand hovering in the space between us. Her fingers curled slowly, like she was gathering something back in. "I don't want this," she whispered. "But I don't know how to pretend I don't feel it." She met my eyes one last time, vulnerable in a way that felt almost too private to witness, and said, "Please don't make me choose between who I am and who I am when I'm near you." She showed me the photo by accident. We were sitting in her car outside the shop, engine off, windows fogged just enough to blur the streetlights. She'd offered to drive me home because my girlfriend had taken the bus hours ago and never circled back. The offer sounded practical. It never is. She was quieter than usual, gaze fixed forward, hands resting on the steering wheel like she needed the structure of it. I didn't ask questions. I'd learned when not to. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. She glanced down, sighed, then picked it up to silence it. When she did, The screen shifted and a photo flashed before she could lock it. She froze. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, thumb hovering. "That wasn't. It's okay," I replied, though my pulse had already changed pace. "You don't have to." She looked at me then, something resigned in her expression. "No, it's fine." She unlocked the screen again, slower this time, and turned it toward me. It was an old photo, faded slightly. A man standing on a beach, squinting into the sun, hair pushed back by the wind. He was smiling, not for the camera, but at whoever was holding it. The smile felt lived in. "He died," she said, not dramatically, just factual. "A long time ago." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. "We were married," she added. "Briefly. Cancer doesn't really respect plans." Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "Neither do people, I guess." She turned the phone back toward herself, tracing the edge of it with her thumb. I noticed then that her hands were shaking. Barely, but they were. "I don't talk about him," she continued. "Not because it hurts too much. Because it doesn't hurt the way people expect anymore. And that feels wrong." I swallowed. "He looks like someone who knew you." She nodded slowly. "He did." Another pause. "The kind that asks for honesty." "You remind me of him," she said finally. The words landed softly. Still, something inside me shifted. "Not how you look," she added quickly. "It's the way you pay attention. The way you wait before answering. He used to do that." She exhaled, shaky. I thought that part of my life was done surprising me. I stared out the windshield, letting the streetlight flicker across my face. "I don't want to be a replacement." She turned fully toward me then. "You're not." Her voice was firm, then quieter. "That's what scares me." The car felt too small suddenly. Every sound, the ticking engine cooling, a distant horn, felt intrusive. "I think I've been lonely longer than I realized," she said. "And you didn't cause that. You just made it visible." I nodded, chest tight. "I don't know what to do with that." She smiled sadly. "Neither do I." She reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand over mine on the console. "No urgency. No pull. Just contact. We don't have to do anything," she said. "I just needed you to know." Her thumb brushed my knuckle once. Barely there. Then she let go, started the car, and drove. But the world didn't settle back into place. It tilted, quietly, permanently, around the truth she'd just trusted me with. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No confrontation. No grand decision made out loud. Just a series of smaller moments that stopped pretending they were separate. My girlfriend drifted away on her own. Work schedules changing, texts getting shorter, plans that never quite landed. It felt less like a breakup and more like something quietly realizing it was already over. I didn't explain much. Neither did she. That silence had its own weight, but it wasn't the heaviest thing I was carrying. The heaviest thing was her. Not in a way that felt consuming. In a way that felt settled. We ended up back at the shop late one evening, long after closing. No storm this time. Just the low hum of the city outside and a single lamp left on because neither of us bothered to turn it off. She sat on the edge of the work table, coat still on, hands tucked into the pockets like she wasn't sure what to do with them. "You don't have to stay," she said, out of habit more than intent. "I know," I replied, and stayed. She nodded, accepting it without comment. That felt like something. We didn't talk much. When we did, it was about ordinary things, repairs that never got finished, a customer who always complained, a movie she'd half-watched the night before and couldn't remember the ending of. It all sounded small. It wasn't. At one point, she sighed and leaned forward, elbows on her knees, face in her hands. The movement wasn't dramatic, just tired, honest. "I think I've been afraid of this," she said quietly. "Not you. Just the idea that something good could still happen without asking permission." I didn't answer right away. I moved closer instead, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted to. She didn't. "I don't want to take anything from you," I said finally. She looked up at me then, eyes steady. "You're not," she replied. "You're meeting me where I already am." That did something to me. I sat beside her on the table, close enough that our legs touched. This time neither of us pretended it was accidental. She rested her forehead briefly against my shoulder, just for a second, like she was testing whether it would hold. It did. I lifted my hand, and let it rest over hers where it lay on the table. No gripping. No urgency. Just contact. She turned her hand slightly, so our fingers lined up. Not intertwined. Just aligned. We stayed like that, listening to the quiet, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. This doesn't have to be loud, she murmured. I don't want it to be, I said. She smiled then. Not the guarded one. Not the tired one. Something softer. Something earned. Eventually, the lamp buzzed faintly, threatening to burn out. She straightened, brushing her coat smooth, like she always did before leaving. I stood too. At the door, she paused, hand on the frame. Looked at me like she was memorizing something without meaning to. We'll figure this out, she said. Not a promise. Not a plan. Just a truth she was willing to stand near. I nodded. Yeah. She stepped out into the night. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, staying felt like moving forward. I'm telling this from a quieter place now. Not because everything turned perfect. Nothing like that. But because the noise finally settled enough for me to understand what actually happened. Some stories don't end with a moment. They end with perspective. This was one of those. What we built didn't arrive all at once. It didn't announce itself. It showed up in the way mornings stopped feeling rushed. In how silence stopped feeling like something we had to survive. In the way she'd reach for my hand without looking. Like her body trusted what her mind had taken longer to accept. She didn't become someone new. That was never the point. She stayed careful. Stayed thoughtful. Still carried the past with her. Not like a wound, but like a map of where she'd already been. What changed was the way she let herself rest. The way she stopped apologizing for needing space, for needing warmth, for needing to be seen without being asked to perform for it. And me? I learned that wanting something doesn't always mean taking it. That restraint can be its own kind of devotion. I learned how much louder it is when someone chooses you slowly, with their eyes open, instead of falling into you because it's easy. Love, if that's even the right word for it, wasn't fireworks. It was gravity. It was the realization that connection doesn't always feel exciting at first. Sometimes it feels unsettling, like something familiar being rearranged, like standing in a room you've been in before and suddenly noticing the light. There were moments we stepped back, moments we questioned ourselves, moments when doing nothing felt heavier than doing something reckless. But each time, we came back to the same place, not out of urgency, but recognition. We didn't fix each other. We didn't rescue each other. We met. Somewhere between her caution and my patience, something steady took shape. Not loud enough to attract attention, just solid enough to stay. Looking back, I think that's what made it real. Not the closeness, not the tension, but the way we kept choosing awareness over impulse, presence over escape. And if there's anything I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the most meaningful connections aren't the ones that rush in and change everything overnight. They're the ones that arrive quietly, sit beside you, and ask, without words, if you're willing to become someone more honest. I was. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?